Well, we're back. We're into number 4 of our 7 key principles, and this one is emotional transparency. It's vulnerability. So, vulnerability and emotional transparency is, it can be somewhat challenging to a lot of people who find it hard to display that sense of emotional transparency in terms of, emotion, tears, putting their heart out, wearing their heart on their sleeve, as they say. I know some folk who really struggle with this, and in fact, I know that they've never, all the time I've known them, I've never seen them emotional. I haven't even seen their eyes get a little bit watery, even a little bit close to emotional vulnerability, emotional transparency. So I know, and I also know why. And you've got to look at it too from the metaphysics behind, no, I don't think metaphysics is the right word. Let me rephrase that. You've got to look at where the ego has its main defense mechanism. And it doesn't want you to be emotionally transparent. It hates emotional transparency. It fights it, it blocks it, it does whatever it can. It will resist it to the max. It's it realizes that as you access that emotional transparency, that emotional vulnerability, as soon as that emotion starts coming up, you can hear the ego, you can see it in people's eyes. It's like, no, push it back down, block it, shut the hatch, lock it, triple door locks, throw away the key, don't let that emotion come up. Why? The question is why? Let's look behind that. Because the moment you're emotionally transparent and available and accessible and all of this starts to coming up, what happens to the ego? It ceases to exist. The ego ceases to exist the moment we have access, or we give access or transparency to our emotional vulnerability. Done. Ego's gone. It's not there. It's not in, it's hijacked and running off down the road. Let's go through this and you'll see. Top, front and center. Do you feel that you may suffer from emotional paralysis? Well, wow, there's some, sickness is not in the world, sickness is not in the body, sickness is in the mind. Emotional paralysis causes sickness. Emotional paralysis causes a contentious block. It causes emotional blocks, causes physical sickness. Arthritis, sore knees, sore elbows, sore backs, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Why? Because there's no flow, there's no life force flowing through the body. Do you know somebody with emotional paralysis? Yes, I do. I know a lot of people with emotional paralysis, and they're invariably always got something not well with the body. So, why is this subject such an important one in terms of the 7 key principles? Why does it sit smack in the middle? Because ego hates it. And the majority of our operating system in the world, through the human element, through the body, based on the past, through all of what we've been taught by grandparents and great-grandparents and parents and all our family members, is the ego thought system, operating rhythm, ways of communication. Undeniably. Emotionally, are we emotionally available and are we emotionally open? Honestly, from my observation, the eternal meerkat in me that's like constantly scanning, I think that sits pretty high there. And I've given this a lot of thought over time, and I think generally, and I'm not pinpointing anybody here, I'm just saying generally, I would give this probably about a 75% reality check, generally speaking, in the world, that 7.5 people out of 10 have a real issue showing emotional vulnerability in public. Never alone, like with family members, it's close ones, yeah, of course. We all have, less barriers and less filters and less resistance around close family members. But in general, especially in public, that number's probably way higher. Where do you sit? Do a check-in. The old barometer. So, emotional paralysis is sickness. Are we emotionally available and are we open to being emotionally accessible? I often look at people in situations where it becomes, you can feel it, and you can feel it coming. And they go like, push it back down. And they just cut it off, block it, do anything, and change and shuffle around in their chair or change position or gaze changes or anything. But that resistance is so fierce. It's not them, the Holy Son of God, them. It's the ego's resistance. But they give light to it, like we've got to take ownership there. Accountability. What happens when we feel the emotion coming up from down below? What happens to us? Where are we when we feel the emotion rising up from down below? Where do we go? What happens to us? Is it like it comes in and freezes our brain? Well, you would think so, looking at the expression on people's faces with the resistance to it. It's so obvious. What happens when we feel the emotion rise from below? Ego comes in and grabs it, and it does everything in its power to hijack it and swing it off to the side. In essence, guys, it is your salvation. It is part of the whole entire purification, repurposing process, moving from two worlds, only one's real thing, moving from the ego across to the holy self. It is part of this. It is part of staying there and going, here's one of those moments, and I'm going to let it come up. Stay present. Go into silence. Just feel it. Just stay with it and just let it come. Let it come. Invite it up. Be okay with that. Don't abandon yourself. I know it's big. I've done it over and over again, and I love being super present and just watching it coming up and then sharing the tears and the emotional vulnerability and transparency, and then watching the reaction in the group or with Nook or whoever I'm with, and then all of a sudden, bang, there's the miracle. Two come together. The one, the Christ, the emotion, draws two together, the gap closes, and we have this beautiful holy instant. Why would you allow the ego to hijack that and push it back down in defense of something real? Something meaningful as opposed to something meaningless. So this is a good one. I'm just asking you to stick with it. Emotionally accessible. Do you give people access for you to be emotionally accessible? I do. I do, and to me that's a big fat yes. Am I emotionally available and open? I do everything in my conscious presence to say yes. What do I do when it comes up and I can feel the emotion? Is I stop, dead mid-center, stop, and allow anything that's on its way to continue to come. I do not block it. Mid-sentence I'll stop and I'll just feel it and I'll just stick with it. Just let it up. Honour it. Greet it. Have gratitude for it. Join with it. Be present with it. Don't abandon yourself. If we, guys, with this whole emotional vulnerability and emotional transparency, if we can't access that, then we're entry proof. The gate's locked. You get that? If we won't access this, we won't work with that, we're entry proof and the gate's locked. Now, look at it from this point of view. If it's the ego doing the doing, it's locked who out? It's locked the truth of who you are. You're the Holy Son of God. It's locked you out. But at choice point, you have the choice. You can flick that switch anytime you like and get rid of this whole entry-proof gates locked theory and just get rid of it once and for all by saying no. So it's for the first time I've said no on my board in the last 4 key principles. I give this one a big, fat, juicy no. I will not allow the ego to entry-proof me and have the gates locked. Not happening. Ego blocks all emotions. You know, I've heard people say, oh, I'm not the emotional type. Well, you know what? The closest you can get to accessing the truth of who you are is in the holy instant. Not in the world through the intellect, having knowledge and being able to pitch metaphysical concepts all day, all day, all day, all day. The closest you can get to accessing the truth of who you are is the holy instant. And the holy instant isn't somebody sitting like this, all locked up at a desk, looking at a computer screen, refusing eye contact, refusing heart connection, refusing vulnerability and emotional transparency. They are nowhere near the Holy Son of God. It's ego, ego, ego. Ego blocks all emotions. So whoever that individual is in the world that says, oh, I'm not very emotional, I'm just not an emotional person. Well, I call BS on all that. That's because you've never taken accountability for the fact that you've allowed, your default thought system is to allow the ego to block your emotions. Finished. It's not individual, you're different to that different. We're not different. We're either the Holy Son of God or we're not. What's this one? Oh yeah, I've heard many people comment. It's like they're in the middle of a conversation and they're going yabba 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 yabba, and they're watching somebody, and that one person stopped in the mid-sentence, and they're continuing with staying with that emotion, and it's coming up, and the other person feels very uncomfortable, so they keep on talking. What I've learnt to do, and I'm happy to share what goes through me as that process happens, is I'll put my hand up. I don't even say a word. I just put my hand up and I'll close my eyes and I'll just go like this. And they can see what's going on. You don't have to stop and lose track of where you are in this process. And what I've got written here is, feel it coming up, stay with it, don't leave it, don't abandon yourself. It's the true holy self coming into your presence. It's the denial, it's the getting rid of the ego completely in that moment as you stay with it. Feel it coming, stay with it, don't abandon yourself. Your holy self. Watch it and just feel it coming up. And that person talking, carrying on, you just go, just hold it, hold it. And it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous moment. It's the only thing that's real that happens here, is the holy instant. The truth of joining. It's where we drop from our head into our heart. Good question I ask, and it's good for reflection too for you, is who is the one that won't show any emotional transparency? Who is the one that can't show emotion? Ego. It's not you. The Holy Son of God has no problem being emotionally vulnerable, emotionally transparent. Ego hates it. It will resist it to death. So ask yourself, when you're in that precarious moment of you're transitioning and you can feel it coming and somebody's like, whoa, everybody go, the moods drop, everybody gets really quiet. Go to yourself, who's the one resisting in me? And just go, it's just ego. That's not who and what I am. Just let it go. Come back down to this one, stick with it. Let it come. Don't abandon yourself. It's a great check-in point. Are you okay to let people see you? Let them see you in that state of the absolute totality of pure innocence. Because that's what it is. Pure innocence. Vulnerability and emotional transparency equals innocence. Total invulnerability and innocence. And I ask people who have issues with emotional vulnerability, I often say to them, do you know what sits underneath emotional vulnerability, transparency? And they go, no, just that I don't want to look a fool, or, And this is what sits underneath it. Miracles. That's the only thing that sits underneath it, is miracles. That's where miracles reside. Thousands of them. You're probably in the back of your bunker, you've probably got a pile of miracles like 6 mile high and 4 mile wide, a big pyramid shape full of these prezzies, where you've abandoned yourself and you've never gone to collect the miracle because you abandoned yourself because you didn't want to let the lid off. Guys, it's just pure joy, spirit, miracles. The reality of who you are is sitting just there ready for the picking. So will you let people see you? Yes. What sits under the thing? Miracles. What do you stand to lose? What is it you stand to lose? What is it we all stand to lose by being available, emotionally transparent, emotionally accessible? What is it we stand to lose? Only one thing. The only thing we stand to lose is the ego's presence. That's all. That's it. The moment you allow all of this to take place, ego's gone. That's the only thing you stand to lose is ego. And it's not you. It's just part of some illusionary default thought system that's not even real. So what the hell are we hanging on to for? So what do you stand to lose? Nothing. This is a really good truth factor recognition check-in point. It's the shortest, most direct route, direct home to the heart. Cuts down all the ego defenses and all the blocks. It's the most direct route back home to the truth of what you are, the Holy Son of God. Emotional vulnerability and transparency is the most direct route to the truth of what you are. So why wouldn't we give that a big fat yes? I ask you, where's your courage to say no to the ego, no to the blocks, no to the defenses? Why would you want to defend it? Why not have courage to say, yes, I'm going to break through this and integrate this into my life? I've left one last one down here because it had a big impact on me, and I know it's had a big impact on thousands and millions of people across the world because, anyway, I'm going to leave a link in it in the description box below this video. On the X Factor, years ago, on the X Factor in Britain years ago, there was a gentleman called Christopher Moloney. He was living with his grandma, and he was just the sweetest man, and he wanted to get up on stage, and he did year after year after year after year. He put in applications and tore them up and never showed up because all his work colleagues told him that don't go there, you'll make a fool of yourself. Well, he finally got, you'll see it on YouTube, I'll leave the link. He got up and he was literally trembling from head to toe in fear, but he worked through that fear, and he stood there and he sang the Bette Midler song, The Rose, and he smashed it out of the park. And he was shaking like this. He was holding the microphone and he was literally shaking all through the whole of his body from fear of being made a fool. His emotional vulnerability, he broke down on stage, and I guarantee there wouldn't have been a dry eye in the whole stadium, the whole auditorium, because of his emotional vulnerability. So what is it in us? You know, and I got it here. When you witness someone being emotionally transparent and vulnerable, do you lose respect for them? And do you want to boo them off the stage? Because that's what the ego tells you as the emotion comes up. Mate, you're going to look like a jerk. Stop it. No. Look at that X Factor Britain video with Christopher Moloney singing Bette Midler's song, The Rose. And it'll just like put paid to all of us. It's like, dude, if you can get through that, I can get through anything. So what the hell are we so defensive about? He went on to, I don't know, he either won it or he came in runner-up on the finals. But his voice was just... Anyway, I'll leave the link. You go and watch it and you'll see where I'm going with this. So, emotional vulnerability and emotional transparency. I'm good with it. You know, I often just join with Nook, and there's no words. We just join and just exchange gaze, and there'll just be a moment where I'll just feel it, and she'll look at me and she'll go, "Oh, thank you," and I'll just allow it to keep coming. And it's one of those moments that is absolutely priceless, because as we both accept that holy instant, it supersedes any reality around there being a human body or a world or anything else, because all of it slips away. So we just go into this pressured moment of sanctuary, of sanctified space, of joining, and the gap closes, and we have this beautiful holy instant of embrace, of pure, gentle, unadulterated, intimate moment of joy and love. That's the price from getting rid of all the blocks. That's your reward, not the price, the reward. So, you know, if you look at where the main operating system and rhythm is for all of our communication in the world, it sits up here at 75, 85, 90%, all ego. Because it resists it and it blocks it all at all cost. Because it doesn't want to lose its grip on humanity, on the planet, on our culture, on society as a species. The Holy Son of God has no opponent. So I join you there. Let's get out and beyond all of this other stuff going on, and let's all show up, be willing, be accountable, be defenseless, be vulnerably accessible, transparent, and let's join there. Thank you. I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.